Movies have become increasingly important to me, so today I want to share with you what I watched this month. I have also become increasingly hooked on this site called Letterboxd, which is a social networking for film lovers, so please follow me. Please follow me. The first film that I want to talk about is The Last Temptation of Christ, a 1988 movie by Martin Scorsese and Paul Schrader, and oh god, what a movie, no pun intended. Basically, it portrays Jesus as a struggling individual who's undergoing a crisis of faith. He's delirious, paradoxical, and for the most part uncertain about what the hell he is supposed to do. No pun intended. With that, he reminds me more of Nietzsche's lead character in Thus Spoke Zarathustra, or even Nietzsche himself as he slowly delved into madness. It's a beautiful piece of cinema, riddled with philosophical dialogues that aren't just out there but truly feel motivated by the situations that the characters find themselves in. It's an exploration of faith, the uncertainty of it, the madness of it, the paradoxes of it, the beauty of it. It's a blasphemous movie, but that's good, god damn it. No pun intended, because God. Then I watched Train to Busan, because I have this thing for Korean cinema and heard a lot about this movie but never watched it, so I did that. It's definitely one of the better zombie movies from what I have watched, albeit far from being my favorite. It maintains a really strong and consistent atmosphere. At times I really feel like I was on the train, but then the characters kept making stupid decisions that the movie just lets them get away with, and the tone gets increasingly melodramatic towards the end, so I don't know, I just felt the movie in the beginning, but then they just gradually lost me. Then I watched 4 movies by Paul Thomas Anderson, because to me There Will Be Blood feels like objectively the most perfect movie that I have ever seen, and Licorice Pizza just dropped at my local theater, so I was like, okay, since I'm already going to watch it now, let's dig a bit into his filmography. I watched these movies. Punch Drunk Love has the most experimental feel to it. It's a moving story about a guy whose world gets turned upside down as he falls in love. I feel like the movie does a great job at capturing the urgency and how overwhelming falling in love can be. I mean that in a chaotic and destructive way, but also in a transformative one, in that it poses a challenge that by all means we have to overcome. Lovely movie with a lovely performance by Adam Sandler, no pun intended, because love. Next up is Boogie Nights, which starts out with a very impressive 4-minute long shot, which I'm still thinking a lot about, and I also keep thinking about how perfect the shootout scene is in the end with the 99 Luftballons music drop in the background. It's just one of those moments that make you fall in love with cinema all over again, I feel like. Then we have The Master, a movie that Paul T. Anderson considered his finest work at the time, which I understand because it's a masterful movie, no pun intended. But I mean, come on, there will be blood, there will be blood. Phoenix and Hoffman give absolutely stellar performances. I was immediately hooked, longing to learn more about those two monoliths of characters. The dynamics were absolutely captivating. So was the minimalist cinematography in this as well. Every frame feels like a painting, and instead of the more lively camera as seen in Punch Drunk Love, Boogie Nights, and even Licorice Pizza, here it remains still and always focused on all that subtle shifts in the actions. And finally, Licorice Pizza, which is, no pun intended, such a sweet and fun movie. Thus, even Hoffman's son, Cooper, making his first appearance, and Alana Haim does as well. After 2 weeks, I'm still listening to the soundtrack. The movie got me completely hooked on artists such as Suzi Quatro and Paul McCartney. John Peters in this movie is absolutely insane and made for roughly 15 minutes that were as tense as the hippie scene in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Looking at it all together, I'm really glad that I had this short escapade into the world of Paul Thomas Anderson, or as sometimes referred to, Panderson, in contrast to Wanderson. I'm talking about The French Dispatch, which as someone with experience in creative writing I have found endlessly amusing. I saw it with a friend who also writes for some magazines, and we just kept laughing for the entire runtime. The movie did get a bit tiring with its fast pace and 3-part structure, which made me leave the theater not feeling that enthusiastic about it, but I feel like I could fall in love with the film on my second viewing, especially since I read a lot about the intricacy and lengths the movie goes to tell its story, including having characters blink on cue to preserve the visual tempo, which is quite something. I rewatched American Psycho just to remember how good it really was, and it is. Bell's performance is absolutely insane. You can pause frames to study the shifts on his face. The movie itself is hypnotic enough as it is. It always feels off in a very Adult Swim type of way. Something's always a tad uncanny, but it's hard to put your finger on what it is. And the ending fell a bit flat, although I got that it's trying to send a message. But overall, the movie is better than what I remembered it to be. This month also got me hooked on season 2 of Euphoria, and while it feels a bit edgy and melodramatic, it is building some interesting premises that I'm excited to see developed. It's an absolute visual feast. It's like a top-notch 1 hour long music video, which is quite something. What I'm also hooked on is Joe Pera Talks With You, which is like the wholesome counterpart to Euphoria's darkness. It's just this slow-paced, minimalist comedy series composed out of 10-minute long episodes where the main character, Joe Pera, just talks with you about breakfast, about rocks, about lighthouses, and it's just beautiful. It's true, it's poetic, and the humor is so dry I could choke on it. I love the show. Joe Pera is amazing. I also watched Paulo Sorrentino's The Hand of God, the director being the mind behind some of my favorite movies of all time. It's a very touching semi-autobiographical story about a dreamlike youth in an Italian city of Naples. I don't know how to pronounce that in English, but basically it's about a childhood or youthhood where all the beauty suddenly gets eliminated with the tragic death of the protagonist's parents, moving the protagonist to become a filmmaker and search for a new type of beauty in this world. In other words, it's a filmmaker's self-reflection and reverie about what it is that made him a filmmaker. And it's absolutely beautiful. My love for Sorrentino's movies is boundless. Believe it or not, this month I have watched my very first Woody Allen movie, perhaps his most well-known one, that is Annie Hall, and I definitely feel like I would appreciate this type of intellectual humor much more a couple of years ago, but I could still appreciate the quirky and fun nature of this film. Diane Keaton's character is endearing, and I love everything about the character's romance. Lastly, I have watched the young Chinese auteur's Bi Gan film, Long Day's Journey into Night, which was advertised as a New Year's date movie in China, only to have audiences freak out about how incoherent, boring and meaningless the movie seems to be. But I found it to be strangely poetic. It starts out like a puzzle and then morphs into this holy experience as we move through a maze of dark alleys in this 1 hour long uninterrupted shot. And I wouldn't necessarily recommend this movie to anyone who's new to the form of slow cinema, because these types of movies can be really draining and boring and difficult to sit through, but as someone who does like this kind of torture, I'm absolutely in love with Bi Gan's movie, even more so with his debut, Kaili Blues. So these are 13 movies and 2 series that I have watched over the last month, and I hope I counted right. You can follow me on Letterboxd, because I have tons of reviews on Letterboxd and like 0 followers and 0 likes. So you could help me with that maybe, because I do like having people in my life that care about the same things, and I suddenly care about movies a lot. So maybe Letterboxd is a nice place to talk about those things. And also, yeah, my future videos might be about movies as well. I hope that's okay. Bye.